Welcome back to Miss Eddie's Math Movies, where it's a cute to be a square. Today's lesson is over 3.1 types of lines, and after this lesson you should be able to identify different relationships between lines. Here are some vocabulary words that we're going to use to describe lines. So the first is parallel lines. You've probably heard this word before, but we're going to give it a formal definition now. Parallel lines are coplanar lines that never intersect. I'm going to show you what I mean by that. We'll draw a picture, which you've probably done before. And then we'll call this L and M. One thing that you may not have known, but to identify parallel lines, we put little triangles on the line. And that identifies that those two lines are parallel to each other. And the symbol that we use when we're writing it is we say L is parallel to M. That makes it a little bit easier to write. Instead of writing out parallel, you can just use that symbol right there. Now the difference, we're going to skip to skew for a second. Skew lines are similar to parallel lines. They never intersect, but they are non-coplanar. And we'll talk about that. So here are two parallel lines. Notice we can always have a flat surface between them. We could create a flat surface. That's parallel. This is skew lines. These lines will never touch, but we cannot make a flat surface between them. So parallel are like railroad tracks. Skew are not going to touch, but they're not making railroad tracks. That's what skew is. We don't have a symbol for skew. Perpendicular lines are lines that intersect to form a right angle. So here's a picture of that. We put a little box in here to identify that that is a right angle. And let's say we call this L and M again. The symbol we use for perpendicular is an upside down T. See, it kind of looks like a right angle there. So L is perpendicular to M. You have to make sure you know those symbols. Parallel planes are planes that never intersect. So if you were to draw a cube, the top and the bottom would be parallel planes because they would never intersect. And a line perpendicular to a plane. It's a line that forms a right angle with a plane. And therefore forms a right angle with the lines that intersect it in the plane. So I'm going to try to draw this 3D for you so you can kind of see they're making a right angle there. If we were to have a line in here, they would make a right angle. So that's a line perpendicular to a plane. If I were to draw a picture of skew lines for you, I'd have to use the cube. So let's say this line back here and this line out here are never going to touch. Even though it looks like they're, imagine this in 3 dimensions, those lines would never touch. But they're not making railroad tracks, so they're not parallel. So let's try some. Let's see how we're feeling about this. Identify parallel and perpendicular. Right, parallel, never touch. Perpendicular, make a right angle. So N and M are never going to touch. And you notice they have those little symbols there. That means parallel. P and Q. P and Q. Notice there's nothing here to tell us if that's a right angle or not. We don't know. That's neither. They're touching, but they're not making a right angle. And N and P. N and P. Well, look at here. They're forming a right angle. That's perpendicular. So the follow-up asks us, how do we know those statements are true? How do we know that M and N are parallel? Well, they never touch and they have those little triangles on the lines. The triangle symbol tells us they're parallel. How do we know N and P are perpendicular? The right angle symbol. How do we know that N and Q are not parallel? Well, there's no parallel symbol and they're going to intersect. And how do we know that N and Q are not perpendicular? Because they're not going to form a right angle. So we're looking at the picture and looking at the symbols to help us. Identify skew lines. So skew lines, remember, are lines that don't touch but are not making a right angle. Are not parallel. So this line and this line, never going to touch but are not making railroad tracks. That's parallel. Skew, parallel. So F and G. Here's F, here's G. Well, those are intersecting. Skew lines do not intersect. They are not skew because they intersect. F and H. Well, F is looking like this, and H is right here. They never touch, they're never going to touch, and they're not parallel. They don't intersect, and they are non-coplanar. We can't draw a plane between those lines. So hopefully you understand now the difference between skew and parallel and perpendicular. Do your best here to try these, naming a pair of parallel lines so they never touch and are making railroad tracks. Perpendicular means they form right angles. Skew means they never touch, but they're not railroad tracks. Now we're talking about parallel planes. Name a plane that appears to be parallel to plane B. Well, here's plane B. It looks like plane C is parallel. It's never going to touch it. Name a line that's perpendicular to plane B. Well, here's plane B. Notice M is in plane B. L is perpendicular. L is making the right angle with B. In example 3, is line L perpendicular to plane C? Well, here's L, here's C, yep. They're making a right angle. In example 3, is line N perpendicular to plane C? Well, you see the right angle, but look at N and C. N is in C. N is not going through C. This is no. N lies in C. You can't be perpendicular if you're lying in it. Alright, now you are going to use this picture. It's kind of like a cube. It's a prism. You're going to find a line that's skew, plane that's parallel, and a line. Make sure you remember how to name lines. You have to use 2 letters and an arrow. A plane uses 3 letters, a line uses 2 letters, and then 2 arrowheads, I should say. So do this now. Well, that's all for today. This is M Cubed signing out.